Yeah. What does Blue Water Concepts do? So Blue Water Concepts is a design build construction company, which for us means we have 3 full-time designers on staff, full-time estimator, and essentially what it means is when you come to us with a project, we're kind of taking it from start to finish. So we offer full in-house design services. So we'll kind of take your project from preliminary design stage right through the design process, putting a couple iterations of budgets together to make sure that it kind of tracks with what you're looking to spend. And then we also handle project management, in-house carpenters to deliver the project. And we specialize in new construction, high performance homes, so net zero passive house. And we also do major renovations. So we don't typically do smaller stuff, but big renos. And then we also do commercial construction. So we'll do commercial tenant improvements. And then we've got a bit of an arm of the business that focuses on remote builds, island work, stuff like that. What does design build mean? So design build for Blue Water means essentially the people that are designing your project are on the same team as the people building your project. We also, we give clients the option, if you want to work with us for design, we have a full pre-construction process really built around making sure what you're looking to achieve with your project matches a realistic budget that we're putting together, and then being able to manage and build it to that budget and that schedule. So that's really what design build means for us. We also work with outside architect teams, so outside designers, and that pre-construction process changes a little bit in that we're there to support the architect or the interior designer, whoever the design team is, with budget iterations and construction detailing to make sure that what's being designed, one, matches your budget, is appropriate for where it's being built, and can be built efficiently. Do you provide free estimates? In my opinion, if a builder is offering a free estimate or providing you with a free estimate, it's because it's not really worth anything. In the construction industry nowadays, there's just too many variables in projects. Builds are too complicated. There's just too many aspects to account for in a new build or a major renovation. The way that we set it up is we'll sit down with you, we'll put a scope of work together. We'll make sure we're all on the same page with what you're trying to achieve with your project. We'll put together a proposal, whether that's a pre-construction management proposal if you're working with an outside design team, or if you're choosing to work with Blue Water's design team, design build in-house. We would put together a design contract, and in that has a couple different iterations of estimates. So we'll do like a preliminary Class D estimate and then a detailed Class B later on. There is a cost to it. For a Class D estimate, which is a pretty detailed line item budget that's meant to get you within sort of 20% of what the project's gonna cost in the end. Our estimators typically putting sort of 6 to 8 hours into one of those. It's, we're using past data from projects. There's a lot of value built into it. And then for a detailed Class B estimate, which is, can be a couple hundred line items, it can take our estimator up to 40, maybe 50 hours to put that estimate together. And the value that a client gets from that is they understand every aspect of the project, what it's going to cost, the money allocated to each one, the level of management required to make those projects happen. And so I think the days of basically saying that someone can build you a house for $400 a square foot are gone. I think that's good for a ballpark, but to have an estimate that's going to hold any water and give you any confidence during the construction phase, you really need to invest the time into the pre-construction aspect of it, and that comes with a cost because there's value there. Why do construction projects go over budget? The main reason that projects go over budget, everyone has heard construction projects going over budget, it's kind of a reputation in the industry. The reason for that, or the main reasons for that, are people just don't spend the time in pre-construction. They don't get a proper design done. They don't spend the time and investment on putting a proper construction estimate together. So following the sort of Class A, B, C, D industry standard for estimates. When you don't do that, you're leaving allowances and you're asking for problems later. So that's one of the big reasons why projects go over budget, because the budget wasn't accurate from the beginning. And there's also a statistic out there that says when free estimates or a free budget is put together for a construction project, they're usually 30 to 40% accurate. So it's 70% off. So it's not even, it's not even in the right playing field. How should I choose my builder? So when you're choosing a builder, it's kind of like getting into a relationship with a partner, to be honest. It's, when you're entering into, you know, whether it's a 6-month, a 9-month, a year-long project with a builder, it's really about honesty. Like, who do you feel is going to communicate properly with you? Who do you feel like you can trust? You know, the idea of having to go out and get 3 estimates for every project, I think is like, it sounds nice, it's a good soundbite, but really every reputable builder, or most reputable builders that you're going to deal with that are on the same sort of playing field, are all going to charge the same amounts. Like, all of our markup and overhead is very similar. We charge our carpenters out at a similar rate. You know, as long as it's a transparent interaction or a transparent estimate and invoicing, then, you know, we're all charging a similar amount. So it really comes down to, you know, calling past clients, like calling references of those builders and seeing how did the past 4 or 5 projects go? Like, asking them to be put in touch with recent projects or recent clients that they worked with. Asking them what kind of systems they have in place for budget management and schedule management. I say this often, is like, there's a lot of really good builders out there. A lot of carpenters are really good carpenters. I think the differentiator between most builders is, what do they have for back-end support? How do they track their budgets? What are they going to be able to do if an unforeseen comes up? How do they manage that? How do they communicate that with you? Essentially, you just don't want surprises, and you want to have a transparent communication throughout the entire process. So really, I think people should be choosing their builder based on who they can communicate with and who they trust. Price is sort of secondary, because the project is really going to cost what the project's going to cost, and you want a builder that is able to forecast those costs as early as possible and as accurately as possible. Why do I have to sign separate contracts for design and construction? So the reason that we break our projects into 2 separate agreements, so basically, if you choose to work with our in-house design, our design team will break it into a design contract separate from the construction contract. And if you happen to be working with an architect or another design team, then we'll enter into a pre-construction management agreement. They're both essentially the same thing, and they're trying to achieve the same thing. But essentially what we're trying to do is set you up in the pre-construction process so that if we're designing the project, that we're designing it and costing the project out accurately, so you know when we get to construction what it's going to cost and how long it's going to take, and that the design is curtailed to your budget. So like, we're trying to be as accurate as possible and ensure that the design team is designing to your budget. And then if you're working with an outside design team, they often don't really understand what it costs. So, you know, if you're working with an architect, they don't have estimators on staff. They don't really understand what today's costs are for certain aspects. And so that pre-construction management agreement that we would have you enter in allows for most likely one of our lead carpenters that would be building that project to spend some time on the project and give feedback. It would allow for our estimator to be able to put like different iterations of budget together, so that as the architect is developing your design with you, you understand what those ramifications are cost-wise. And then, yeah, we're also putting schedule together to make sure it understands. So there's a project manager involved in both processes as well, so that when it comes to construction, there's been multiple touch points and feedback from the team that's going to be involved. And we break those out separately. So that's like one cost structure. And then when it goes to production, you'll enter into a construction contract, which is separate from that. So it's kind of 2 separate things. And the reason we do that is we just want to keep those costs separated. It's like very clear pre-construction costs and then construction costs, and separating the 2. What are the benefits of the design build process? So the benefit of the design build process, whether you're working with our in-house design team or whether or not you're working with an outside design team, so an architect's office or an interior designer, is you're essentially getting input from everyone who's going to be involved in that project throughout. So it's basically like an integrated design process. So you've got the design fees. So you've got either your architect or your interior designer's design fees, or if you're working with Blue Water, you've got our sort of like architectural design, material selection, all of those design fees. But separate from that, the value comes from being able to bring in the lead carpenter or site foreman that's going to be working on that project to give feedback about how it's going to be built, construction details that we've seen make sense and work well. And then also the project manager. The project manager can get involved, give feedback on like the site conditions and how those construction details are going to translate with those site conditions. He'll also, or she'll also be able to put a detailed schedule together. So based on those drawings, we'll be able to put like, this is roughly how long this is going to take, and then get it more accurate as it goes. And then we've also got a full-time professional estimator. So that estimator is able to put realistic, accurate pricing to the drawings, whether it's ours or some outside design teams. As the drawing set gets more and more detailed, we can iterate those pricing so you go through. So you're getting feedback from the team that's actually gonna be building the project ahead of time. And it really helps stamp out any issues that might come up and guides the design in a way that is gonna be as efficient as possible. Where does Blue Water work? The area that Blue Water Concepts works is the Sea to Sky. So we'll work from Lions Bay to Whistler, that's our main area. And then we have a large focus on remote island builds. So we have a company boat. We'll go out to Gambier, Keats, Paisley, kind of any of the islands in the Howe Sound. And then for the right project where we feel like we're gonna add value and it makes sense for us, we'll do one-off projects further afield. We've done lots of those, and it just really depends on if the project makes sense for Blue Water Concepts to take on. What types of projects does Blue Water specialize in? We specialize in new builds, major renovations, commercial TIs, and remote island builds. So on the new construction side, we typically like to focus on high performance construction. So, we rarely do code built, like code minimum built. Passive house, net zero, big focus of ours. Larger scale renovations is really where we add the most value. And then larger sort of commercial TI projects, commercial builds. And then we have an arm of the business that's really focused on well-managed, well-built, remote access island builds, boat access. We've built with helicopters, those types of projects. How do you run your projects? So the way Blue Water runs our projects is every project gets a designated project manager. So that project manager has an allowance for the time that they'll be working on your project, whether that's 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, it kind of depends on the scale and complexity of your project. So that project manager's responsibilities are budget management, control schedule management, so updates around budget and schedule to the clients. They're responsible for material procurement and subcontractor management. Those people, so like the project managers are typically 70-30, so 70% in the office, 30% on site, but they're the main point of contact for a client. So when you sign on with Blue Water, you get introduced to your project manager, and that's really who you're gonna be communicating with from the start to finish. And then we have a lot of in-house carpenters and apprentices. So typically each project will get a lead carpenter or a site foreman, and that person doesn't usually get switched out. So they'll be there from start to finish. You'll get to know that lead carpenter. Sometimes if there's like a really sort of like finish heavy aspect, like, finish carpentry to the project, we might switch out the lead carpenter for someone who's a little more finish carpentry focused. But typically those two sort of positions are set, and then carpenters and apprentices might bounce between sites, but essentially you get a project manager and a lead carpenter from the start. Why do you operate a cost plus model instead of fixed price? So the reason that we operate a cost plus model is I feel like it's the most fair and transparent way to deliver a project. Essentially, cost plus means you're going to get a very detailed line item takeoff of your entire project. So it's called a quantity survey takeoff. There's going to be a cost code that goes with each corresponding line item, and that's how your budget's going to get built. So we'll track each line item to each cost code, and you're going to get a copy of every receipt, whether it's for materials. You're going to get a receipt for every 2x4 and every bale of insulation that goes into the project. And then you're also going to get all of the invoices, so material invoices, as well as from subcontractors. So we provide those to you. You see our cost is passed on to you, and then we put a markup on that. So that markup is to cover overhead and profit, right? So it's typically 15%, 10% is the profit we're looking to make on the project, and 5% is to cover the overhead, so office, vehicles, things like that. And so in my opinion, it's the most transparent way to enter into a construction project or a relationship with a builder. If you're going to do a fixed price contract, the onus or the risk is entirely on the builder, and often what the builder is going to end up doing is putting a 25, 35% markup on his costs or her costs to ensure that they're covering any unforeseens and all those things. So, often you're going to spend more money in a fixed price model than you would with cost plus. And it's not as transparent. You don't really understand where the costs are going. In a fixed price model, they're not showing you every receipt. They're not showing you the line item costs of each one. It's just kind of grouped into maybe a couple groupings or just one large number. So honestly, I feel like cost plus is the most fair way to do it for both the builder and the client. It means that our margin on the project is baked in there. Like, we're not going to make any more than that. But, you know, I think that's the most fair way to do it. How do payments and invoicing work? So the way that we do our invoicing at Blue Water is we bill bi-weekly. So essentially, every 2 weeks you'll get an invoice from the admin team of Blue Water. Before you get that invoice, essentially all of the receipts, all of the invoices from subcontractors, everything associated with your project comes in. The project manager will code each one to the respective line item in the budget. So you'll get a budget update every month, and there'll be line items in there with cost codes associated with them. Each receipt is coded to each cost code. And then you'll get an invoice basically accounting for all of those receipts, and then a breakdown of the labor that went into your project. So how many project management hours were put into your project for those 2 weeks, as well as all of the labor that went into it. And then that's sent out every 2 weeks. The reason that we do that is, one, it's better for company cash flow, keeps things moving well, but it also gives us the flexibility to pay sub-trades a little bit earlier. So, you know, if you've got 60-day terms or even 30-day terms, often sub-trades want to be paid a little bit quicker. If you're able to offer that ability to pay them a bit quicker, they're often showing up on your sites earlier. It's easier to schedule projects. It's easier to keep projects moving along. There's times where we'll deviate from this depending on how your financing is set up. Some banks don't want to release money every 2 weeks, so there are times when we can adjust this, but it's what we found works best. What is the difference between a project manager and a lead carpenter or site foreman? So a project manager and a lead carpenter or site foreman play two very distinct roles. So project manager is someone who's assigned to your project and is fully responsible for budget, schedule, material procurement, and subcontractors. So essentially they're there to make sure that the project is running on budget, give you budget updates, keep you informed on the cost of the project. They're there to manage the schedule of the project, so ensure that things are running on schedule, follow up with sub-trades and other stakeholders that can affect the schedule, make sure you as the client understand what the schedule is. And then they're also there for material procurement, so they need to make sure materials show up on time, and sub-trade management, so making sure subs are doing what they're supposed to be doing, showing up when they're supposed to show up, that they're paid on time, and that's essentially what the project manager does. Site foreman or a lead carpenter is more of a hands-on role. They're on site every day. They're the ones that are kind of making everything happen on site. So they're less focused on, they're aware of the budget, they're aware of the schedule, but they're less focused on managing it. They're given their goals each week by the project manager, and they're there to essentially bring everyone together to make sure that project happens. So our site foreman, lead carpenters have the belt on, they're on the tools. They might be managing sub-trades on site, they're managing in-house labor on site, and they're there to build the project, but they're two very separate roles. You'll notice that our project managers are about a 70-30 split between 70% in the office, 30% on site, because they're often, you know, writing emails, coding receipts, putting out schedule updates and budget updates. So yeah, two very different roles.